All right. Welcome, everybody, once again to our Wednesday night webinar. Always great to be here. Thank you to Paul Melia for our theme song, which we are big fans of his here at the NOCD World. Check him out on YouTube or any of your favorite listening devices, programs, whatever the heck you want to call them. I should be more up on all those things. That is Hold On to the Colors by Paul. So Paul has been a guest on our show, and we always appreciate him. You are here once again for our Wednesday night webinar. Welcome. NOCD sponsors this. NOCD, a downloadable app you can get through Google Play or iOS. Check us out. It is a free download, and if you're looking for teletherapy anywhere, you can go to nocd.com or treatmyocd.com, and we'd be more than happy to set up an appointment for you with one of our awesome care team members to be able to get you in touch with one of our therapist who's trained to do ERP with you for your OCD, and we also treat hoarding and body-focused repetitive behaviors and tics as well too. And we also do NOCD 411 sessions, which are education sessions. So if anybody is looking for some education about OCD, maybe you're a family member or friend and want to know some things about it, we'd be happy to help set that up for you as well. Tonight, I am joined by one of our awesome NOCD therapists. Hello, Melanie.
Hello.
Why don't you introduce yourself to our fans out there in the cyber world?
I will do that. Thank you, Dr. McGrath, and thank you for having me. I feel privileged to be here tonight. So
Awesome.
my name is Melanie Dideriksen. I am a licensed professional counselor in the state of Michigan. I am also a certified drug and alcohol counselor. Going on about 10 years as a therapist, which is interesting because it was my second career choice as an adult. I went back to school in my 30s, so the fact that I'm coming up on 10 years is dating me, but that's okay. I love NOCD. I love being a therapist here. I think ERP is a fabulous form of treatment. For OCD, I think the behavioral approach allows me as a therapist to see my members get better quicker and have some really good results. I also have personal experience with OCD for as long as I can remember. I grew up with a father who was diagnosed with OCD, and I now have a 11-year-old son who's diagnosed with OCD. So lots of experience personally and now professionally, thanks to NOCD. So thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Of course. Well, as we go through the night, I'll throw some things your way and ask some questions, and we'll mix that in with our friends out there listening and see what their questions and comments are, and we'll kind of go through a bunch of stuff. So let's get started. Stephanie says, any tips to cope with low motivation? Sometimes I feel like I don't have the energy to fight against my thoughts, even though I want to get better. I think that's a great question, Stephanie. And one of the things that happens with OCD is that OCD takes away your ability to enjoy things, because now it puts doubt and uncertainty into things that you really enjoy. And if we switch over to another diagnosis called major depressive disorder, and we look at one of the two requirements for meeting the diagnosis of major depressive disorder, one would be feeling depressed, and another would be a loss of interest or pleasure in things that you once enjoyed. Fascinating, isn't that? Look at there. What do we have? We have a crossover. So why wouldn't people with OCD also be depressed if they've lost interest or pleasure in things that they've enjoyed? Melanie, I'm going to bet you've seen that in maybe your dad or in your son as well too, how things that were so important to them at one point now are frightening or scary or just not as joyful, right?
Absolutely. And it can be it can really feel daunting, just kind of putting one foot in front of the other. But what I will point out, Stephanie, one thing I noticed is that statement at the end is, I want to get better. And I think that if we look at that, that's such a powerful statement. And I think just that willingness, we always want that willingness when you're in treatment and when you're moving forward. So, that's a start. That's a small step in the right direction of just stating that. So kudos.
I've always liked the discussion of willingness versus willfulness. OCD willfully wants you to stay the same, and you have to be willing to challenge OCD and be different, right?
Right.
And And that's kind of that internal battle that goes on inside people's head of, should I give in to what OCD wants or should I not? And if I don't, what bad thing will happen? Because my OCD is telling me something bad will happen if I don't do what it tells me to do. And yet I would just challenge anyone to give me one example of when OCD told the truth. That's all I've asked. In 22 years, I've asked for one person to give me one example of OCD telling the truth. No one's been able to give it to me yet. But everyone's giving me a yeah, but what if example, right? I get a ton of those yeah, but what if examples, and I never get here's an actual truth that OCD said. So for all of you listening out there, I want you to keep that in mind. Do you listen to what your OCD says and believe it hook, line, and sinker? Or can you recognize that you don't have to listen to what OCD says? You can doubt what OCD says, actually. There's nothing wrong with doubting something that OCD tells you.
Right. I will also add that, when you brought up my dad as kids, he was always in his head, and OCD keeps you in your head. It takes you away from the people you love, the things you love, and kind of going back to that depression, not enjoying those things that you once did. And, when we were kids, we learned to use the phrase with my dad, and we called him Papa. But we'd have to say, Papa, can I have your undivided attention? And that would cue him to tune into what the people that he valued were asking or needed from him. And so I think that that's a powerful thing that he did for us when we were little, because he recognized that it would pull him away, and now as a parent with my own OCD, I have to be cognizant of my children and, when I get in my head with my OCD. And so it OCD wants that undivided attention, and it's like, I'm not gonna give it to you.
OCD sure does want undivided attention, actually. Yes, 150,000%. It's like, oh, pick me, right? Kind of thing. And I try to teach people to ignore OCD and be like, OCD is not the one you want on your team, right? The OCD can be the last kid picked in the playground, not the first kid picked in the playground, right? And hopefully there's 87 million other kids to pick before OCD. So it'll take you a lifetime of picking other things before you pick what OCD wants. That would be great. Natural B says how to handle sexual orientation OCD as a bisexual person that manifests as a genuine orientation change. People say you can figure it out, etc., but they wouldn't say that about different themes. I'll never be able to make a choice, it seems, without OCD manipulating it somehow. Can I just always remain uncertain and base it off whether I'm happy in my relationships? I think yes, right? I mean, Melanie, you I don't know if you are married now. I see a ring on your finger.
Yes, I am married. Yes.
Okay. Yep. Melanie, have you been 100% thrilled and happy with your spouse every day of your life since you've married him?
Nope. And he's watching right now, so he's supportive still. But
and he would say nope about you too. I'm gonna bet.
I don't know about that, but yes, he definitely would. We joke sometimes that, well, yeah, we fall in and out of love all the time, and sometimes you just want to punch each other in the face. Not really, but I mean, that's how it is. Nothing's certain, right? All the time.
Yeah. And I love the idea there. Why not base things off of whether, you're feeling good in the relationship that you're in, not in the doubt that OCD wants to throw into the relationship that you're in. Natural B, if you're happy in the relationship that you're in, good on you. That's great. But nothing wrong with that, right? Isn't that just awesome? And I'm happy that that's the case. OCD really loves to poop on the parade of happiness anywhere that it possibly can. Think of a lovely parade of happiness, and OCD is the Clydesdales coming through the parade with a marching band following behind them, and the Clydesdales are just laying poop bombs all over the place. And then, behind the Clydesdales, before the marching band, is the elephants, and they're laying a couple of poop bombs as well too, right? And that's what it does, right? I mean, OCD has not paved the way in gold for anybody. It has paved the way in crap, is what it has paved the way in. So, yeah.
And it will latch on to those things that you care the most about.
Oh,
so if you can just expect that, yeah, okay, well, this is probably something I really care about, so OCD is going to come after it. But again, it's not getting my attention.
100%. Joe says, how is it that someone can go from having a normal day to, bam, out of nowhere, having sexual intrusive thoughts and then POCD, even though you've never had an intention to any of that? Well, Joe, I would just say, how is it that any day of my life I can be doing something and bam, a randomly weird thought pops into my head? Because we have noisy brains, everybody. That's why. We all have noisy brains. Every one of us, every single day, probably has weird thoughts that pop into our head randomly. I can't tell you the other day, why I thought about the time that I was on a beach when I was a kid. I was in my basement. I have no concept of what led to that thought popping into my head, right? But it did. So either a sound or a smell or a sensation or a flash of a color or something might have somehow triggered it. Who knows? A time of day, maybe. I have no idea. And you know what? I'm not going to try to figure out why it popped into my head either, because I just don't care. It doesn't really matter. And that happens to people on a daily basis. But then suddenly a thought pops into your head and OCD grabs onto it. And now suddenly it means something. You have to do something about it or whatever. I mean, I'll confess, I've been walking through a mall and seeing, kids throwing a tantrum and thought, someone needs to just, spank that kid or something like that. Now, did I go over and say, well, it's got to be me, I'm going to spank that kid? No. And did I go over to the parents and suggest it? No. And would I actually spank anybody? No, I have no intention of doing that. Can I control the weird things that pop into my head, though? No, absolutely not. Just because that thought popped in my head didn't mean that I had to do it, right? I mean, again, Melanie, I love the phrase that you said earlier, talking about some days you and your husband might want to punch each other in the head. Does it mean that you guys do that every time that thought pops into your head?
No, absolutely not.
Why not? You thought it. Isn't it true? Isn't it real? Doesn't it have to mean something because you thought it? Or can you just have a thought?
Right. And I think part of that too is, that the attachment to the feelings, the attachment to the anxiety that brings something up and our wanting to over-identify with that fear, that feeling. So if I feel this way, it must be true. It must mean this. And, our feelings are liars too. I mean, I could be so disgusted to use your, example of the marriage or the husband. I could be so disgusted with him one night, like where I could barely look at him. And then the next night it's like, oh, my sweetie again, I mean, it's so, if I based a decision, oh, I'm going out and getting a divorce right now on that night of feeling disgusted, or he's really bugging me, I'm not going to do that.
Right. So, and OCD, it never calls anyone sweetie, but it will call everyone disgusting, right? I've not met the OCD that says, well, I'm afraid that everyone loves me and thinks I'm awesome. That is not what we've treated anybody for. It's always the worst, most awful, most horrible, worst case scenario types of things that people have the fears of and then come in to talk to us about. So, Joe, the other reason that this might happen is you may have a good day, right? And you're going along and you're having a good day, and then you recognize you're having a good day. And then your OCD recognizes that you're having a good day. And your OCD says, well, it's a good thing you didn't spend time thinking about pedophilic OCD stuff. And bam! Now that your OCD has said even that, guess what? You've been pink elephant, right? The moment you tell yourself not to think of a pink elephant, that's what's going to happen. And all you need, Joe, is any kind of reminder that your OCD latches onto this thing once in a while, and your OCD is going to go, wait a minute, we haven't thought about that for a while. Maybe we should test Joe right now with a thought and see how he reacts to it. Oh, look at how overworked he is. That must mean he really does like children. Okay, well, let's get some compulsions going now, yeah, and all that stuff, which is all crap, right? It's just, again, the parade of crap that OCD lays out in front of the marching band right there that everybody has to march through, unfortunately, is what you're dealing with. I think parade of crap might be our theme for the show today, Melanie.
I like it a lot. I think we have some good artists that could probably do some illustrations.
Oh, we need like a meme. Just like a parade route with a marching band with right. 900 Clydesdale turds just on the street would be. If anyone wants to meme that and send it to me, that would be great. All right, Jacob says, hi, Dr. McGrath. I get these feelings that I'm not really talking or I can't hear my own voice, and my OCD theme of depersonalization and worrying about getting it has drove me crazy. Any advice? Yes. So what I love to do is something that we call interoceptive exposures, where we purposely create feelings of derealization or depersonalization. Now, that could involve hyperventilating for about 5 minutes straight in order to sit with the absolute discomfort that has, and you kind of get to the point of feeling like you're literally going to pass out. There's a YouTube that I love, and I can't show it on here because when you do it over another streaming service, it just doesn't come through the way that if you watch it actually on YouTube itself. But if you go to YouTube and type in natural hallucination and watch that and follow the directions that it tells you to do, I promise there's nothing that pops out scary at the end or anything like that, but just follow that and watch the directions. And those types of exercises would be things that I would suggest to people. And again, these are suggestions tonight. Tonight, we're not doing therapy with anyone. This is all suggestions, but those would be one of the things that I would suggest for people to do, to sit with the discomfort that they're experiencing from derealization fears or depersonalization fears, and learn that they can handle those experiences and that they don't need to let those experiences scare them away from doing anything. Mick says, I have severe OCD with endless triggers, which is making ERP a struggle and slow-going process. This is putting a great deal of strain on my wife and caring for our new child. Well, Melanie, this sounds like a question for you potentially to take a look at as well, too, since you know about the family relationship concepts in OCD that you've lived yourself. Just let me say, he also goes on to say, she doesn't know how much longer she can cope with this. I want what is best for her and our child, but don't know if or when I will get better despite my best efforts with ERP and medication. I don't want her to be stuck living with this, but fear losing my family. You've been through this with a family, you know, what's it like?
Absolutely. And Mick, I just have to, first of all, say my heart goes out to you. I know that can really be, that can be tough. It can be tough to feel like you are, you know, you're wearing on people, or people are affected by your OCD. I think, you know, first and foremost, you want to recognize that, you know, she is making that effort to understand, or, you know, to kind of accept that, and keep doing what you're doing. It sounds like you are in, you know, working through ERP. You have medication on board, you know, so you're making the choices in the right direction. You're not, you know, standing there saying, I'm not going to do this. The only thing I would also say is maybe she needs some support outside of the home. A new baby, that can add all kinds of other stressors as well. So, you know, maybe she needs some supportive therapy, or some educational, you know, education about OCD herself. So, you know, you would want to support her in seeking that help. So you're not the only one she's running her stressors through, you know, give her kind of that objective opinion on the outside too.
So, Nick, you say ERP is a struggle and a slow-going process due to endless triggers. So I just want to ask you, every trigger that you have offers an opportunity to do a compulsion or to not do a compulsion. Every compulsion you do feeds OCD and makes it stronger. Every not compulsion that you do weakens OCD a little bit as well. So every time that you're triggered offers you an opportunity to change. You have to make the decision that everyone, you might say, well, it's endless triggers. And you know what, it might be. And it might be for a while, feeling like it's endless triggers, right? But that also means endless opportunities to not give in to obsessive compulsive disorder as well. And I would hope that the route that you would choose is going to be endless opportunities to not give in to OCD. And as I say it, choose, I don't want that coming off as mean, well, if you just choose to do it, you'll do it, right? I understand how difficult that is. So I don't want to sound callous and just saying, just choose it and it'll happen. That's not what I mean. But it does mean really buying into this notion. I know that I'm going to be uncomfortable for a very long time as I choose not to do what OCD wants me to do. And in my choice to not do what OCD wants me to do, and in the choice to be uncomfortable, I'm doing that ultimately because it's going to be the best thing for me in the long term instead of in the short term. And Mick, I'll ask you this question because I use this sometimes in therapy as well too. And I appreciate that you shared about your wife and your child. I want you to imagine 15 years from now when your child is in their late teens, maybe early 20s. Okay. And imagine if, and we wouldn't want this to happen, right? But imagine if your child unfortunately got hooked into drugs and alcohol, and your child went into rehab, and you went to visit them, and your child was sweating and throwing up and had a fever and felt worse than they've ever felt in their entire life. And they looked at you and they said, Mom, Dad, could you please just go down the street to the liquor store, buy 2 of those little airplane bottles of vodka, and sneak them in here so that I could stop going through this withdrawal, because it's going to kill me. It feels like the worst I've ever felt in my life. Could you, if you love me, if you care anything about me at all, you will go down the street, you will get 2 bottles of vodka, and you will sneak them in here for me. Mick, I want to ask you, would you do that? Would you say, you know what, I can't stand to see you suffer. I feel horrible about it. I'm going to go get you some alcohol so that you'll stop going through withdrawal? Or Mick, would you say, I understand that this is probably the most difficult experience that you've ever had in your life. And frankly, I hope it is the most difficult experience you will ever have to have in your life, and nothing else will be this bad. But the goal is to get all that alcohol out of your system so that you can learn to live without having to use drugs and alcohol. And me going down there to get that vodka is only going to sustain your alcohol and drug problem instead of help you get rid of it. So as much as I love you and as much as I hate to see you suffer, I know that you're going to suffer more if I actually go and get you vodka than if I allow you to learn that you can live without having to need it. And if that's the case, Mick, if that's the route that you would take, that you would think it is absolutely acceptable for my child to physically be uncomfortable now in order to be better later, I want you to accept the notion that it's absolutely okay for you to be mentally uncomfortable now in order for you to be better later as well. Okay. I hope that resonates with everyone, and I hope you really get what I'm trying to say there, that we've said in our society, medical discomfort now is worth it to feel better later. I'm going to have someone cut into my body and cause even more pain than I'm in to remove whatever that thing is that needs to be removed, or fix it or whatever. But after it heals, it's actually going to be better than it was before we had that surgery. So I'm willing not only to feel pain, even more pain than I am now for a short term, in order to be better later. Excuse me. And that's exactly what we are asking you to do in ERP as well. I hope that helps. Reminder, once again, you're listening to the NOCD Wednesday night webinar. I am Patrick McGrath, Chief Clinical Officer at NOCD. Melanie's joining me tonight. Hi, Melanie.
Hi.
Good to have you here. And a reminder, everyone, if you're looking for teletherapy for OCD, please go to nocd.com, and would love to have you there. So, all right, let's see. Well, we got a couple of good hellos from people, and let's see. Amanda says, can you go over somatic OCD like swallowing and blinking, please? Of course, happy to. And Melanie, if any of these hit anything that any of your family members have had too, please, I'd love to hear the personal story.
Yeah, for sure. I can actually speak to this because with my OCD, somatic symptoms are one of the things that I struggle with. In fact, the swallowing thing has been something that has shown up throughout my life. I remember being a younger middle school age, and I'd have probably 2 months, 3 months where I felt like there was a egg in my throat, couldn't swallow, and paid attention to that and sought reassurance. My mom's a saint. Everybody in our family says that for always, putting up with that. But yeah, somatic OCD is basically just that. You are paying attention to those physical sensations that you may have. So it could be a sensation of swallowing. Something feels off. You're blinking. How many times am I blinking? You're yawning. Oh, if I think about yawning, it's similar to the pink elephant. If I think about, I catch myself yawning, well, that's going to make me want to yawn again. I mean, we know yawns are somewhat contagious, so I feel like sometimes you can catch them from yourself. You start thinking about it, you're going to keep yawning, and then you're going to I'm going to count those yawns, and I'm going to try not to yawn, as hard as I can. I'm going to see how long I can go, because this symptom must mean that there's something wrong. So Yeah, somatic OCD symptoms can just be basically paying attention to any of those physical sensations, and it can really be anything. It can be a weird feeling in your hands, your wrists, your knees, something in your head. I mean, it's endless.
And then, of course, the belief that something's wrong about it, right? Something's off.
Right.
And what if something's off? And shouldn't I just check it just to make sure? And maybe I should ask somebody else just to make sure as well, too. Because what if something were off? What if I wasn't blinking right? What if I wasn't breathing quite right? Could something bad happen to me if that was the case? So maybe I better just do it again just to make sure that I did it the right way. And then that gets into the notion that there actually is a right or a wrong way to blink, right? And when you take something that occurs naturally, like blinking and breathing, and then you have to take some conscious control over it, suddenly it can become very interfering in your life, right? I've said this about golf. I love to golf, but I know how to ruin my golf game, and that is to think about my golf game. The moment I start thinking about my golf game, I should just leave the course, because it's going to be horrible. I mean, it's horrible anyway when I'm not thinking about it, but it's even worse when I start to think about it.
Well, and I think too with somatic symptoms, that's it's very easy to go down with any OCD symptom really, but compulsion of going down that Google rabbit hole of what causes excess blinking, what causes this sensation, and you will get every single diagnosis that could possibly be causing those symptoms. So.
Mm-hmm. Beth says, what would you say to a person who hasn't left their home since March 2020 due to the pandemic? I would say, I would like to work with you and help you figure out a way to get out of your house and back out into the world. That's what I would say. And I would want to see what anyone could do to help with this. Now, there's an agoraphobia component here potentially, right? Or there's also a health OCD component here potentially. So I want to get a good diagnostic just to see. I'm going to go with it's probably related to the health OCD things due to the fact that it started around the pandemic. So we have a stressor there, but there could be some fears around panic as well too, and agoraphobia that could come in. So we need definitely need a good diagnostic here. But my goal would be to be able to send a positive message to someone that says, hey, it's time to get you out of the house. Let's see what we can do to get you back out living in the world. The people are going back out there again. And yes, is COVID still out there? Sure, right? I mean, does anyone want to get COVID? No, absolutely not. Do some people get COVID, get pretty sick? Yes, absolutely. Do some people get COVID, not get sick at all? Yes, absolutely. So there's also other things out there that you didn't hide from, like the flu and various other things that are out there. And heck, now there's monkeypox or something like that. I mean, we can always pick something to be afraid of, and our OCD will always want to pick up on something to be afraid of. But just because there is something to be afraid of doesn't mean that we have to stop our life for that thing. Did all of us put a little pause on our life for a while? Sure. All right. And did we figure out how to adjust to that? Hopefully most of us did. Did some struggle with that? Sure. And that's where a good therapist can be really helpful to help you with those types of things.
I'll read one of these questions here.
Go for it.
All right. So Angel Ortega says, thank you for all of your help. Wondering how to deal with setback from a new theme after you have been doing well. Thank you.
Oh, well, take it. Go ahead.
Yes. So OCD is notorious for, like Dr. McGrath said earlier, kind of, someone's doing well, I'm gonna look for something to latch onto. So I think that the nice thing is, once you're doing well, once you've been in treatment, once you know that those tenets of ERP, you're never going to go back to square one. You're never going all the way back to rock bottom, because you have those skills, and those skills don't go away. So what I would encourage you to do is to go back to your toolbox, go back to that ERP toolbox and start applying it to that new theme. And sure, when you have a setback, sometimes there's a need for, I'm going to reach out to my therapist and see if maybe I need to increase sessions for a couple times, or, if you are in fact in ERP therapy or doing that. But remember, you have dealt with this, so you have those tools, because you're doing well, and setbacks are just that, they're setbacks. But I will say OCD, it's like go into the file cabinet, we've already dealt with that one. That doesn't seem to be bugging her anymore. Let me flip through these files and see the next thing that I can pull out and latch onto, or a Rolodex. It's just spinning it, and okay, we're going to go with this one now. And I think that's pretty classic with OCD too. I myself have cycled through lots of different subtypes, but the more you have the tools, the easier it becomes to just recognize it as OCD.
Yeah. Lindsay says, can you recover without medication? Sure. There's plenty of people we've done ERP with who didn't take medication who did very well. So is medication required? No. Can you do medication? Sure. The American Psychiatric Association suggests that you do ERP or ERP plus medication. Even they don't suggest medication alone. So we would just hope that whatever you're going to do, that there is an ERP component to whatever it is. Jen M. Bueller, I'd love to know from both of you what you have learned from the people you've treated who have OCD. Well, go ahead, Melanie, take that one.
Oh, I say this in my support groups all the time, but I think that amongst the OCD members that I have learned how resilient people can be, and how truly dedicated my members are to their treatment, and they really want to get better. And so I have just really learned that it helps me, when I'm having a bad day. I'm certainly not perfect. I'm an OCD therapist and trained in ERP, but does that mean I don't get hooked sometimes? Absolutely not. So it's great to remember those members that may be dealing with something really hard, and they are pushing through, and that helps me to push through too. It's encouraging. It's encouraging, and I think the OCD community, especially the community here at NOCD, is awesome. And there's a lot of support out there in lots of different avenues. So that's what I've learned.
Awesome. I have learned that OCD knows no bounds. That OCD will throw anything out there in its path to trip you up, right? And OCD knows no shame, but it says there's a lot of shame that you have. OCD knows no guilt, but it throws guilt upon you at all the time. And that OCD is out for one thing, and one thing only, and that is for OCD. OCD doesn't care about you. OCD doesn't care about your family. OCD doesn't care about your friends or your schooling or your job or anything. OCD cares about one thing and one thing only, and that is that you feed it. And the only food that OCD eats is compulsions. And therefore, OCD has one singular mindset, and that is this: to get you to do compulsions. That's it. That's OCD wants, for you to do compulsions. And so OCD will do whatever it possibly can to get fed. And to get fed, it means it needs you to do compulsions. And it will therefore lead you to do anything and everything to do a compulsion. And that is what I've learned. And my job in all of that is to expose OCD for the liar that it is, and show people that you need to pay absolutely no attention to anything that OCD says whatsoever. Because OCD is nothing but a bag of crap, right? It is a liar, and it is selfish, and no one should give it the time of day whatsoever. That's what I've learned. All right, let's see. Delia says, hi, Dr. McGrath. I had a quick question about how to navigate a core fear of being anxious forever and not being able to perform well. Accepting has been hard, even through all my struggles. Thanks. This one resonate with you, Melanie, at all? You want to throw anything in there?
Well, I think I'd like to hear what you have to say about that. But one thing I will say is, that fear of not being able to perform well, perform anyway, do it anyway, So I may or may not perform well. So what? Keep performing.
Yeah, there's an opportunity that during this this webinar, I will do something totally stupid and screw it all up. That is always a chance that will happen here. Even though that is a chance, I'm going to still do the webinar anyway and take my chances, even though there is a chance that it won't go well. And there have been times like my mic has gone out, or there's been a glitch in the system, and it ended early or something like that. And guess what? People still came back to listen to this show. So, I have seen people goof up and make mistakes. I have paid money to go watch bands play, and they've goofed up. I remember going to see a very famous piano player, I won't mention his name, in concert, and he missed a note. And it was very obvious that he hit a flat instead of a natural on one of the notes during the song. Did everyone get up and be like, oh, well, screw this, I'm out of here? No, he still got an applause after he was done, right? Everyone knows my love of the band Rush. I have seen things happen during Rush concerts that were mistakes, right? Where something was triggered wrong and it played 2 notes too late, and then the song was a little whack after that point, right? And Geddy, the lead singer's looking over, pissed off at the sound crew for, like, what's going on over there and everything. So did we all be like, well, screw this concert, we're out of here now? That was a goof up. No, we loved the concert. It was awesome. And in fact, it's one of the things that we're like, oh, even the gods of rock are human, right? Even they goof up once in a while. But did it stop me liking them or appreciating them or wanting to see them in concert more? No, absolutely not. I ended up seeing them 30 times in concert. So, if anyone treats you the way that OCD treats you, you would hate them, right? So if you actually do goof up and someone comes up to you and says, man, what a stupid show that was. I mean, I can't believe that mistake. Man, that's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. I'm so frustrated with you. I can't believe it. I'm sickened by this. I want my money back, and I'm going to put up a billboard and say how much you suck, and I'm never going to deal with this ever again. And oh my God, right? Do people do that? Do your friends do that? I mean, OCD does that, but do the people you love and who love you do that? No. So if the people you love and who love you don't do that, but OCD does, that means OCD doesn't love you, because OCD doesn't care for you and treat you the way the people who love you do. If OCD loved you, it would treat you the way that the people you love treat you, but it doesn't. It doesn't at all.
And I think there's also there's an acceptance of, there might be some anxiety there,
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, performers talk about it all the time. There's performers who not only mess up, but they're so anxious before they throw up before a show, or because of that anxiety, but they still go out there and do that. So it's that whole idea of, kind of doing the opposite of what that bully OCD tells us to do. It's telling you, don't perform. You're going to mess up. You're going to make a mistake. And then it's robbing you of something that could be wonderful too. Absolutely.
There was a hockey goalie that threw up every game, right? You just throw up every game.
Mm-hmm.
Heck, I'll just little self-disclosure here. I threw up every day of first grade for the first semester of first grade.
Mm-hmm.
I just randomly throughout the day I would puke. I was such an anxious little child. So, now I run an anxiety clinic. What do you know? Hey, look what happens. So, and Melanie, people like you are a great example for somebody who has these conditions to now treats these conditions, and who can recognize them in yourself. And Melanie, I'm going to bet, but please correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to bet you don't have every day as a perfect day.
Definitely not. No.
And I'm going to bet there's days that anxiety feels like it's running the show for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
You're right. Absolutely.
And do you then say, well, that's it, I suck, I'm done, I'm going to let it take over now? Or do you recognize it and work on moving on?
Recognize and work on moving on. In fact, I'll say, there's times I might be in a session and all of a sudden it's, oh, what, why do I have this why is my heart going fast, but I'm not going to give into OCD, because I'm there to focus on my member and to help them. And so, it's pushing forward, it's choosing something different, and not giving OCD. Yeah, it's there. It'll always be there, but it's much better than it was in my 20s, in my teens, you know, because I've learned how to manage it as well. But yeah, no, perfect days. I'd say, has there ever been a perfect day?
I haven't
Not
found
yet.
one yet.
Not yet.
I haven't had one yet. So yeah.
Right.
Mhm. Your friend Phoenix says hello, by the way, just so you know. So
Hi, Phoenix.
and I think it's Tache says, how do I deal with body OCD, like focusing on how you breathe? Oh, well, we did one of those a little bit earlier, so I think we answered that already. Let's see. Delta says, I've been in therapy and doing ERP. So far, it's been successful. Great. Currently, my OCD has been saying, I will give into my theme. Any advice? Well, your OCD could also say that you're going to turn into a monkey. Does that mean that that's going to happen? Or you're going to turn green like a frog or something like that? Or you're you're going to turn into a mouse or something like, whatever it might be, whatever stupid, ridiculous kind of thing that OCD might say. Does it mean it's true? I mean, of course, OCD is going to say that you're going to give into your theme, right? What better thing could OCD say than to taunt you with, hey, you're going to give in to me. Guess what? You're going to give in to me. I will ruin you. I rule you. You are mine. You are going to give in to me, right? What a great way to taunt somebody, isn't it? Melanie, have you seen that for yourself or your family, where you have OCD tries to sit in the back and just be like, over here, yep, hey, no, yep,
Very similar to that. People with panic disorder. You have a panic attack, and then it could be another month before another panic attack hits, but you spend all that time worrying about when the next panic attack is going to hit. Well, right. OCD's the same way. Here I am. Yep, here I am back here. I'm going to ruin it for you. And I think that the advice would be to keep doing your ERP and turn those response messages towards that OCD in regards to that. Right. May or may not give into my theme. I might have a bad day. I might struggle a little bit. That's okay.
Mm-hmm. And even if you did give in, what do? You learn from it, right? So what do I do next time not to give in the way that I gave in this time? Right. Everything is an opportunity for learning in these situations. MJ says, is perfectionism related to OCD? For contamination OCD, how to do when I avoid to touch things for a long time? So yes, you can absolutely see perfectionism type OCD is one way that you can see OCD come through. And yes, perfectionism can get treated with ERP. We do something called mistake practice, where we have people purposely make mistakes and do things wrong and learn that they can handle it. So that's something that we love to do with people. And in terms of contamination, how to do when I avoid to touch things for a long time. I think we're a little off maybe on some translation there, but in terms of ERP, yes, there may be things that you haven't touched for a long time or that you haven't interacted with for a long time. So we're going to build a hierarchy to get you to build up to doing those very interactions that you're afraid of doing and learn how to have it. This is not a throw you in the deep end of the pool and teach you how to swim experience. This is a stick a toe in the water and see where it goes from there kind of experience. And that's what we want to do. We're not here to scare you away from anything. We want to teach people that they can handle the things they're afraid of. All right, let's see. If there's any that you see there, Melanie, please feel free. Go ahead and jump in on one too.
Yeah, let's do this one. Riley Meyer says, I'm so indecisive with decision making. I ruminate for a long time because I make a decision, and what if it's the wrong decision? Any advice? So I think this is something that we see with people who have OCD. It's something that I certainly have experienced in my life as well. That rumination over a decision that we have made, we feel, it might take us a super long time to get there. We finally make it. And then it's all of that, mental review over the decision and maybe it was wrong. So I think that deciding quicker is a good way. You know, sometimes you can give yourself a time limit. I have people who will flip a coin. And you know, if you're really ruminating that long over a decision that needs to be made, you know, then maybe leave it up to the hands of fate. But I would also say, you know, when it comes to that rumination after the fact, you know, then that's where you can really, you know, come back with your responses to, you know, and just accept that uncertainty of the decision, you know, accept that anxiety that you may have made the wrong mistake or wrong decision, and it might have been a mistake, you know, it might affect people, and then move on.
Yeah, is there a chance? You tell me, Melanie, and I'm going to trust your answer here. Is there a chance to never make a mistake ever again for the rest of my life?
Well, I think it goes right along with that. Will I ever have a perfect day? So I'm going to say no.
They're going to say no. All right. And it, you know, here's one thing that I talk about, and in some of my talks, I talk about this too. So I want everybody to think about this for a second. I talk about the fact that things are neutral. So let's say in front of us, we have an elevator. In front of that elevator, we have three people. Person number one is a 4-year-old kid. Person number two is a woman who works in an office building. Person number three is a guy with an elevator phobia. Elevator door opens in front of all of them at the exact same time. What does the 4-year-old child do when the elevator door opens, Melanie?
Runs in.
Exactly. And then presses a bunch of buttons as well too, right? Mm-hmm. Melanie, what does the woman who works in an office building do when the elevator door opens?
Probably just walks in, right?
Yeah. And then scornfully looks at the child because now they have to stop on 12 floors because he pressed it.
Right. You're wasting my time.
Yes, exactly. What does the guy with the elevator phobia do when the elevator door opens?
Turns around and goes the other way.
Exactly. So here's the problem. 3 people just experienced the exact same thing. The elevator door opening. One thought it was awesome.
Right.
One was absolutely indifferent to it. And one was totally afraid of it. Which one was right?
The kid.
You think so, right? But some with an elevator phobia will say, no, the guy was right.
Right.
And other people who don't care, well, the woman was right. She just got it right. So here's the confusion a lot of people don't recognize is that we're afraid of perceptions. Mm-hmm. Many people would want to say the elevator is frightening or the elevator is fun. The elevator is none of those things. The elevator is the elevator, but the elevator is subject to the perception or interpretation of anybody who experiences the elevator. And therefore, that's what we're really dealing with when we're talking about this, right? We're really talking about how do people perceive the elevator? What is the perception of this thing? So many people want to try to convince me that, you know, oh my gosh, this thing is bad or awful or horrible. I've never once believed that, right? I mean, I'm not saying that there aren't things that aren't fun. Like I'd prefer not to get into a car accident, right? You know, I'll go with that as well too. But who talk to me about the idea that they can't live their life because there's this horrible thing out there. And how can I live my life with this horrible thing out there? I think that goes back to our question about the coronavirus earlier for the person who maybe hasn't left their house since March of 2020, who's so afraid of getting the coronavirus. And what if they did? And, you know, you can live the rest of your life in your home and avoid getting the coronavirus and probably be miserable about living the rest of your life in your home. Or you could go out and live your life and maybe you'll get COVID or maybe not. I had it a couple of weeks ago. It was funny, actually. You know, so someone put on here, like, I seemed a little off. I was like, yes, you know, I have COVID, but I still did it. Right. And I was fine. I didn't even have a fever. It was such a low experience of it. Right. I have not stopped living my life before and after. Did I like getting it? No. Did I handle it? Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I say a lot in therapy is, will you spend the rest of your life sitting next to your tombstone wondering when you'll be 6 feet under it? Or will you spend the rest of your life having a great time partying like a rock star, upon the day of your death, arriving at your tombstone wearing a bow and having a martini in your hand saying, man, that was a great time? Now that's what I'd like to do, is the second one. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people who do the first one, right? And I think about the movie Shawshank Redemption, get busy living or get busy dying, right? And I want to move people toward get busy living. That's what I really want people to do, is I want people to get busy living, and I don't want people to get busy dying.
Well, and I think that's a really good point with the perception too, about the elevator being unchanging, because I think that can be a particular trigger. It isn't the trigger that's causing the fear. It is the reaction. And I'd also like to say, hey, let's, with ERP, maybe we can be like that 4-year-old and run in the direction of those fears. Essentially that's what exposure is. And someday those perceptions or those reactions to that same trigger is going to be very different.
Mm-hmm.
So that's cool. I like that. I might use that.
You can. Anybody. Feel free. Steal it. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Is there another question out there that you wanted to jump into at all?
Let's see.
Kelly Rubin says, I've been on the road of crap for 20 years.
Yes, I'll do this one. Let's see. Because I do have a substance use background as well.
Yes, please go ahead.
Substance use disorder treatment background,
yes.
I should say. I have an SUD and OCD. I lost 10 years that I could have spent with my family to those diseases. How do addicts / people with OCD cope with the shame and grief of lost time? Yes, I think that is a good one. And I think, shame and grief are big topics for addiction, for OCD. And it's really about, I think part of it, a big piece of it is forgiving yourself and making that decision to forgive yourself and move forward. Now, does that mean you don't have to maybe atone for some of the mistakes you made, regain trust in moving forward? No, it doesn't mean that at all. It doesn't mean that people are just going to accept, lost time, that there might not be relationships that were affected, not at all. But I think that, a big piece of it is deciding to forgive yourself, because you have to do that to be able to move forward. You can't get that time back. No matter how much you ruminate about it, no matter how much you shame spiral or you stay in that grief, it's not coming back. So the only thing you can do is move forward. And it's not easy at all.
I've and people listening to this are familiar. My wife is very sick. Now she's on hospice, so we have her here at home hospice. I'm going to turn this around and ask the questioner there, how much should I resent my wife for the fact that a year after we got married, she got cancer, and we spent the last 6 years dealing with that, and we haven't had much fun or done anything exciting or really, because we've been dealing with her cancer. So you tell me how much I should resent her for that. And everyone, when I say things like that, says, well, no, I don't know. Oh my gosh, it's not like she wanted it or anything like that. Great. And nobody wanted substance abuse disorders, and nobody wanted OCD either. And yet you're resenting yourself for having had that. And now you're saying that you have shame and guilt for the fact that you lost 10 years of your life to those things. But you wouldn't tell me to have shame and guilt against her for her cancer, leading us to also have lost 10 years or 7 years now of the lives that we wanted to have with each other. And I love pointing those things out to people, because people get so caught up in this, it's the thing that I'm thinking is so real and so right and so true, and it just is the way that it is. But all I got to do is take their example and just switch it slightly to somebody else, and everyone suddenly is like, oh no, I would never say that to anybody else. And that's something I call specialness. The rules of the world don't apply to me the same way they apply to everybody else. It's fine for other people to have had OCD and substance use and to have lost some of their lives, and they can come through that and they can figure it out and they can be forgiven, but I can't. I should have known better. I should have done something about it. It's my fault. I'm a bad person. And OCD just eats that for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right there, and leads to more guilt and more shame and more disgust of myself as a person. And you know what? The fact that maybe one of the worst things OCD does is it doesn't allow for forgiveness whatsoever. It gives no grace to anybody at all. And that, I think, is hard.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And Melanie, you've had to have dealt with that in your family as well, too, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's something that, I know my own father deals with that, some of that guilt really. But, we don't, he's a 67-year-old man now. We don't hold that against him. We don't look back on our childhood and say, man, wish, if you only would have done this, or, but he does it to himself, and you can lose more time when you do that, when you don't forgive yourself, when you don't let yourself off that forgiveness hook. There's 10 more years that'll go by that, it's might not be the addiction piece, or maybe even the OCD, but it's just not forgiving yourself and being able to live in that truth. So yeah.
OCD doesn't want you to live and have fun, because if
Right.
you live and have fun, you let your guard down. And if you live and have fun and let your guard down, then maybe something bad could happen. So you live the life that I want you to live, that's full of obsessions that keep you vigilant all the time for anything bad to happen, and then full of compulsions for even thinking about the fact that something bad could happen, to neutralize it, because a thought is just as bad as an action. And if you have a thought, that must mean that you want the action to occur. So what a bad person you are for just thinking something as well, too, and on and on and on and on.
Mm-hmm.
There's no out in this, right? There's no release lever other than doing a compulsion. And then once you do the compulsion, you might have that momentary feeling of, and then the whole thing starts over again. You've reset the clock, and now it goes back all over again.
Yep.
Right. So
I kind of think of like one of those, like, old fashioned, I always think of like a water generator or something, but like, we're used to see like the person in the wheel, spinning it.
The mills. Yeah. Like you'd have the water wheel and everything.
Yes. But, there would always be cartoons or, just these parodies where it's like the person who's actually like spinning the wheel, a hamster wheel, you're going to have to hop back on. If you do that compulsion, like you said, it just resets it. You got to get back on. And, it's that everything's going to come to full stop. And, here's OCD coming right back in. There's no, right. It's circular, not linear when you do that.
It is the hamster wheel of hell. That's what I call it all the time. So.
Right.
Hey, we've got a couple of minutes left, so I just want to remind everyone, and then Melanie, I'm going to give you the last word for tonight, as I like to do with our guests. Thank you for listening tonight to the NOCD Wednesday night webinar, and of course, check us out at nocd.com. Download our app at Google Play or iOS. If you're looking for help with OCD or hoarding or BFRBs or tics, we would welcome you reaching out to us at nocd.com, or downloading our app and hit the therapist button, where we have care team waiting to talk to you to see what's going on. We take multiple insurances across the United States. We just got on with Empire and Aetna as well, too. So that's new and exciting for us here at NOCD. And we would love to be able to help change your life with great exposure and response prevention therapy. Melanie, it's been a joy having you with us tonight. I know everybody's appreciated your insights as well, too. I can see it in the comments. And I will always love to give our guests the last minute. So please, words of inspiration for everybody else listening tonight.
I just want to say thank you so much for having me. It has been a pleasure. And words of inspiration, keep going. Keep doing your ERP. Don't give up. There is light at the end of the tunnel. And, this is, OCD is a teeny, tiny little monster that is, he's like the, plankton on SpongeBob that, seems so much bigger when he's talking into that megaphone, so you don't have to let it get the best of you. So, and we're here for you. Let's end this OCD crisis and bring awareness to this disorder that so many deal with. Thanks so much.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody. Of course, we will be back again next Wednesday. We'll talk to you again. Have a great night, everyone. Make it a good one. And be better to yourself than your OCD is. All right, everybody? Enjoy.